Alright, here's part two. So, here we go. By the evening's inn, full of wild boar, moonshine, and tall tales of the Florida swamp, the cast was in no condition to care where they slept. Fearing the worst, Carl had stayed away from the liquid brain assassin that was passed around in mason jars. When the brothers came to wake them before dawn, Carl was happy he had chosen to steer clear of the shine. He was the only head not pounding. After a quick breakfast of strong coffee and cold boar meat, the brothers jumped in their ancient pickup truck and led the way to what they call the docks. After nearly 5 miles on rooted road in the blackest of pre-dawn, they finally arrived at a cutout just off a road that led down to the water. As it turned out, it was going to take 2 trips at all, as 2 boats were tied off together. Carl had seen pictures of airboats, but he was pretty sure what he was looking at was something original. Small boats wide enough to bolt 2-car bench seats. Man, are that big? Anyway, behind the captain's chair, which bore a surprising resemblance to a bucket seat from a Ford Mustang, with a large fan connected to the motor that had to belong to a small car in its previous life. They loaded the girls and Danny along with half the gear into Phil's boat, while Ringo, Carl, and the remainder of the gear went with Willie. Before they left, Danny changed into a plaid shirt and jeans. If you could get a chance in some of the morning light, he told Carl, see if you can shoot us on the boat. I'll double as Willie good enough, if it's not too close. Just after the sun came up, Willie slowed his boat and allowed it to drift. Phil followed suit. What's going on? Carl asked. You got the camera ready? Willie asked. I do. He'd been shooting some nature scenes in the pre-dawn along the way. Then get it ready, Willie said, picking up his rifle. He took his time drawing a bead across the water. You got me? Yes. Then follow my aim. Carl turned the camera out toward the bank. It looked as if Willie had zeroed in on the large log until the shot fired and the gator flipped over. Willie dropped 2 more bullets into the creature. Got him, Phil yelled. What was that? Carl asked. Gator, Willie said flatly. Your partner said we had to feed you. Phil maneuvered his boat over to the fallen beast and tied it to the craft. Did you get that? Danny yelled. You can't buy that kind of a shot. As much as the sight sickened him, Carl knew his friend was right. When they finally docked the airboats, there was still a good 30-minute hike into the swamps with all the gear. Carl thanked God there was a well-worn path to follow. Before they left, Phil removed the alligator's tail and cut it into steaks for easy carrying, and left the remains for whatever other animals needed a meal. Oh, I don't know what gator steaks taste like, but some people said the gator meat tastes like chicken, but I don't want to. I don't want to know. Anyway, the cabin itself was little more than a 1-room shack with cots and cook stove and an outhouse around the back. I would like to have a bigger cabin in the woods, thank you. Anyway, just to have more guests. The brothers had cleared a good 50 feet around the front, at the center of which was a large cooking pit. Picked clean bones littered the area. Got a nice tree stand up there, Willie said, pointing to a tree at the side edge of the clearing. You could take your camera up there for some good pictures, I think. Carl looked up at the sheet of plywood nailed into the tree some 20 feet up. It was a great place for a camera. He could see the entire clearing from there. Looks good, he said. Once I catch my breath, Hollywood folk don't have much get-go, do they? Phil asked Willie with a laugh. I just want to do a laugh, I'm sorry. Anyway. Phil built a fire in the pit and prepared the steaks while Carl and Danny assembled the cameras. Hope y'all don't mind the fire, he said. We kept it going the whole time we're out here. Helps keep the mosquitoes away. After lunch, Danny shot some scenes of dialogue created on the spot between Abby, Ginny, Phil, and Willie. Carl got some pickup shots of the cypress trees with snakes dangling down, marshy waters, and various forms of animal life around, all with Ringo in his half costume wandering like an ape between the trees. Near dusk, Carl realized he hadn't brought any lighting equipment. Willie, he called out, I see some floodlights on the cabin and a few of these tree stands. Do you have electricity out here? We got a generator, Willie replied. Turning to his brother, he added, Phil fired up to Ginny. Seems these Hollywood people didn't bring anything they needed. It's getting dark. Danny called up to Carl. We need to shoot the missing link entering the campsite. When Phil had returned from starting the generator, Danny turned to the brothers and the girls. I need you all to sit around the fire, guys, facing the woods. He pointed to the woodpile at the side of the house where he concealed the second camera. When I give you the sign, Willie, you grab your gun and get up. By the time Carl had secured himself in the equipment in the tree stand as best as he could, the sky had already turned to gray. Ready when you are, Ringo. Ringo headed out of view into the bush. Let's hurry, he said. This place gives me the creeps. Hey, Danny said, sniffing in the air. What is that stink? Jenny's face twisted in disgust. It's the skunk-ape, she asked. Phil laughed. No, honey, it's most likely a dead possum or something up one, but it sure does stink. All right, you told them girls that ain't no such thing as a skunk-ape, and yet you smell a skunk smelling. He's nearby. Lordy, you need to take a precaution. Anyway, hey, Carl yelled, I'm rolling here, and we are wasting film. Danny stepped up. Ready, Ringo? Something scampered through the underbrush to the left. Willie stood, grabbed his gun, and fired into the bush. A high-pitched screech filled the air. What the hell was that? Danny said. I don't know, Willie said, but I got it. He carefully advanced toward the area where the thing appeared to have fallen. Using the barrel of the gun, he pushed the brush aside. What do you got? Phil asked, heading in the direction. Looking through the camera, Carl watched as Willie pulled out the limp body of something that looked like it might have been a monkey or a fur-covered child. What is that? What is it? Danny asked. Don't know, Willie said. Looks like some kind of monkey kid. Rinko the man-ape came running out. Hey, could you have killed me? Looking at that limp creature in Willie's arms, he said, let me see that. Even from his high vantage point, Carl saw the oddity of Ringo in costume holding the creature. It looked like father and son. Danny, he yelled down. Get a close-up on Ringo and that thing. Already on it, Danny said. I give you $100 for this thing. Ringo told Willie. Make it 2, Willie said. Looking at the ape child, Ringo decided quickly. 2 it is. What are you going to do with it? Stuff it, Ringo said. It will look great in my exhibit, The Missing Link's Child. He was already seeing it as it would appear, and the extra price of admission he could not require. Abby, Jenny, and Phil are moved closer to seeing the thing. Ew, Abby said. It stinks. It does, Jenny said, sniffing the air. This whole place stinks, if you ask me. A loud, forlorn wail filled the air, drawing all eyes to the trees surrounding the area. What was that? Abby asked. Was it the skunk-ape? Don't know, Willie said. Could be, I reckon. We never seen one. But you said you shot one. It's a story we made up to scare tourists, Phil said. The wail echoed through the air again. Willie grabbed his gun and looked up. "You see anything?" he shouted to Carl. Now, you say you made up that story of shooting a skunk-ape just to bring in tourists, really? Or tell tourists? That's why you can't trust people's stories sometimes. Anyway, using the camera lens, Carl scanned the trees. "No, I can't see anything." Down below, he heard the others coughing and choking. "What's going on?" "The air," Ringo yelled. "It's gone sour." Oh boy. I hope I don't smell that in the future. Willie drew his rifle up and scanned the woods ahead. Something was trashing about. A moment later, Carl saw the unbelievable as a two-legged creature, nearly 7 feet tall, covered in matted fur, came crashing into the opening. Upon seeing its dead offspring, the beast tipped its head back and roared, spittle flying from its jaws. Oh, man, you just made him angry. But the look of its breast, it was a full-grown female version of the thing Ringo was holding. Screaming that terrible wail of sorrow, it changed forward. Willie drew a bead of fire directly at it. The she-beast flinched back as blood suddenly exploded outward near its shoulder. Before he could get another shot, the beast reached its space and yanked the rifle from its hands. With its elongated arms, it drew the rifle back and hammered the weapon club-like into Willie's temple, even from his place in the trees. Whew. Man, that thing has super long arms anyway. So they're saying it's a mama. You just killed her baby and she's mad. Carl heard the sickening sound of a melon exploding on impact with a baseball bat. Ooh. Willie dropped to the ground. His brain leaked from his shattered skull. Oh. Yeah, she's really mad. Anyway, I don't want to see that. Ugh. Splattered skull. Oh, man. Makes you sick to the stomach. Anyway, the mother beast turned her attention to Ringo, who stood panicked and frozen. She swung her arm around and simply removed his left ear, cheek, and his nose with her claws. Oh! Man, makes your nose flinch. And half of his face. Now faceless, Ringo stood for a moment screaming before she grabbed what remained of his head and twisted his neck clear around with an audible crack. Yep. There goes your sideshow career. But anyway, grabbing her lifeless offspring, the mother beast turned her gaze on Phil and the girls who had backed up to the fire pit. "Get to the house," Phil yelled at the moment before a half-dozen adult-sized creatures entered the clearing from the sides, cutting off their line of retreat. Through the camera lens, Carl saw Danny creeping from the woodpile toward the cabin door. He had nearly reached his destination when one of the beasts saw him and closed the distance between them in 4 lunged steps. "Danny," Carl said, "behind you." Danny turned. The creature's mammoth paw swung toward his head. He tried to counter the blow with his arm, but the beast caught in midair with one mighty wrench. It pulled Danny's arm from his body and turned it on him, beating him to the ground with it. Carl watched his friend fall as his life bled out. The creature tossed the arm to the side and drove both front paws into Danny's stomach. Ooh. Ripping the soft flesh apart with one pull. These beasts ain't playing around. I'm telling you. You mess with them, they come back messing with you. Good Lord. Once it had opened its meal, the beast dropped to all fours and buried its snout into Danny's innards. Oh! I would probably throw up if I saw a video with that right there. Or be like, viewer discretion is advised. Yeah, right. Ugh. Phil fired at the beast, hitting it in the back. "Behind you," Carl yelled, just before another member of the tribe grabbed Phil's head and plugged it from its body, as easy as popping the head of a dandelion from its stem. It looked at the head a moment as if wondering where it had come from before throwing it into the fire. Left alone and surrounded, Abby and Ginny held onto each other, screaming as 4 of the beasts fell upon them. Even through the camera lens, Carl saw a little more than fur-covered bodies mobbed over the girls. A moment later, an arm flew from the middle, followed by another. The sounds of the girls screaming suddenly went silent as their heads were tossed from the pile. Man, them girls should have tried to make a run for the van or something, get out of there, but well, there's nothing you could do, basically. The lights went out when the hum of the generator died. Illuminated now only by the fire, the beast became mere silhouettes of movement in the dark. Still, Carl tried to focus the camera as best he could. At first, he was actually glad for the lack of clear vision. It was only when the sounds of animals snorting and the tearing of meat filled the stillness that he wished for the rattling sound of the genie. After what seemed like hours of wet chewing sounds, Carl heard the beast leaving back through the underbrush. He offered a silent prayer that they either couldn't climb trees or couldn't smell him through the own stench. Much later, when the sky began to lighten, he started the camera back up and used the lens to scan the area. Below him was a nightmare of pure carnage, bodies without limbs, limbs without bodies, and blood-soaked ground everywhere. He had never seen the aftermath of war, but realized it must look similar to what he recorded from his bird's-eye view. Every body had been torn open, its innards removed and eaten. Oh, man, I can't stand that. Oh, my goodness. Ooh. I wish them girls survived, the good Lord. When the sun was full up, he finally dared venture down to the ground. There was no way he could remember what he had or hadn't touched, nor could he just leave Danny's body out for whatever swamp creatures should decide to feast on it. He had enough time in the tree to know what needed to be done. Collecting the bodies and body parts into the center of the clearing by the fire pit, Carl doused them in kerosene he found in the cabin. Watching the funeral pyre, Carl began planning his next steps. He was the only footage ever shot with such clarity, the only real proof of the existence of Bigfoot creature. And not only Bigfoot, an entire tribe of them. He would be famous. I wouldn't be worried about famous right now. I'll be worried more about, like, regretting bringing my friends out there. Good Lordy. Some other people. It took nearly 2 hours to haul the film equipment from the campsite to where they had docked the airboats, and several more hours yet before Carl managed to maneuver Willie's boat to the point where they had parked the microbus. By the time he arrived, the smoke from the swamp had stopped. Should anyone ever venture out that far, a burned-out cabin and a mass of bones was all they ever find. After loading the van, he drove non-stop, living on a diet of truck stop food and black coffee until he reached the studio in Detroit. Upon arrival, he went straight into the developing lab. By the time he had screened all the footage, he was sure of two things. On one hand, he had the only footage proving without a doubt that the Bigfoot race existed. He would be heralded at the modern-day Columbus. On the other hand, with a bit of editing and a little narration, he actually had enough footage for a feature film. He could say he bought it from a struggling filmmaker. That happened all the time. He'd have to add some bogus names for everyone involved, including his own. He wouldn't be famous, but if Blood Feast could raise the kind of money it did, he could be rich. The acting was not good, the story was weak, but you couldn't beat the realism of what he captured on film for effects. He'd need a better title. Danny may have been an idea man, but Terror of the Missing Link was horrible. He thought of the carnage he seen for a few moments. Revenge of the Blood Creatures had a nice ring to it. Alright, that's going to be it for now, but man, was there actually a film called Revenge of the Blood Creatures? Let me know down in the comments if you guys know. But anyway, that's going to be it for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those blood, I said blood, sorry about that, post notifications. And I'll see you next time. And I still feel sorry for them people that got killed. But anyway, eating their innards out. Sayonara.